Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland, one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. We are here for the penultimate episode of Daredevil Born Again, Art for Art's sake. It's been a long weekend. Here we are to discuss this fantastic show with Gabby Martin and retired Judge Matthew Sciarrino. Gabby, how you doing?
Doing good. I will say this, I feel like was the biggest return to the where the Netflix show was in terms of just the sheer violence and, in my opinion, scariness. But I loved it. So it's great. And I'm excited to see where it all ends up. And, we already have casting news for season two, new casting news every day. So that's exciting too.
Fantastic. Your Honor, how are
Yes,
you?
nice to see Daredevil Born Again, and back in the red suit and the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, to be front and center, and as Gabby said, the violence level was clearly at the levels of the original Netflix show.
Yeah, yes, it was. And boy, howdy, was it glorious. Just, the first time around, they had exceptionally well choreographed fights. That continues here. And the writing a compelling story where you care about the characters outside of the super suit and being able to have some extreme fighting. I'm talking about the grappling hook, that it's like, whoa, that's impressive. But people aren't here just to hear us nerds talk about how much we love it. They're here to hear us talk about our legal analysis. And there's a lot to unpack in this episode. So we've all made notes. And first is, did Daredevil interfere with a police investigation? And then I'm referring to him going to the crime scene after the officers have left. And Your Honor, it looks like you have some thoughts on this.
In as much as after the officers left, the officers would have already gathered what they kind of needed, and so it might not rise to the level of obstruction of governmental administration, which is a misdemeanor crime in New York under Section 195.05, where a person gets in the way or prevents the administration of law or other governmental function. In as much as this was done post uh, investigation, you can make the argument that it didn't in any way interfere. Therefore, it didn't rise to the level of interfering with a police investigation that he would be charged with a crime. That being said, in as much as the mayor clearly has it out for Daredevil, it would not be surprising that he would be charged with such a crime, but I don't think he would be convicted of such a crime.
We then get the bully club to the police officer's face, which, while therapeutic, and one could argue that police officer clearly deserved it, you don't go around doing that to police officers. Your Honor, what legal issues could arise from the bully club to the face?
Yeah, New York has several, as do a lot of states, enhancement crimes where the person that is being assaulted results in a bump up. So there are bus drivers. I guess 2 years ago they added judges, which was nice. So if you attacked a judge, you're getting it was a bump up. So sometimes an assault that might be a misdemeanor assault would become a Class E felony. The statute which was most applicable to this case was 120.08 of the New York's penal law, which is assault on a peace officer, police officer, firefighter, or other emergency medical professional. And this is basically a serious assault of a police officer, and it does bump it up to all the way up to a Class C felony because of that special enhancement. And by being a Class C violent felony, the defendant would be subject to a penalty of 3.5 to 15 years, depending on the record and priors that person had. There's also aggravated assault upon a police officer, which is a second bump up, which makes it a a B felony, and this is with intent to cause physical injury, serious physical injury. He does cause such injury by means of a deadly weapon or dangerous instrument. There is plenty of case law which does say that a billy club and those kind of things can qualify as a dangerous instrument. So that would bump it all the way up to a class B, B as in boy felony, and the maximum for a B felony is up to 25 years in prison. So it would be the two enhancements, both using the dangerous instrument and the fact that the victim was a police officer would bump it up. So we get two bump ups.
Gabby, any additional thoughts on the incident in the Muse's lair?
Well, what I thought was interesting when I saw this on the notes is, you know, because you have him acting, or I guess quote unquote interfering, if you will, in the investigation in two ways, right? Because he's acting as Daredevil, where he goes into Muse's lair, but there's also the questioning of White Tiger's niece, right? And he's really kind of acting as an investigator there, right? He's asking her specific questions about what happened, about the incident. And to me, that was more, you know, like in the role of, is he acting as an investigator, a private investigator, a police officer? Obviously, I think he's most likely interfering with the investigation because even though the police had left, I did note that the crime scene tape was still up. So it would, you could make an argument that the investigation is still ongoing. They're still, you know, they may have left. Clearly, the police officer came back, right? And they're monitoring the scene. So it's not like it's been abandoned. And clearly, all the drawings are still there. Like they had not secured any of that into evidence, right? Which is very weird to me that they just, I guess she just picked up the like little piece of thing with blood and she's like, oh yeah, I'll just leave all the papers here. So I definitely think he's guilty of the government, you know, in probably obstructing the investigation. But I think we could argue his role as a quote unquote investigator asking those questions, he could be in some form still representing the Ayalas in maybe a civil suit of some kind. And so he's asking that as their lawyer to understand what happened to her because this is his client who's put in jeopardy. So even though it seems like a more investigator role, that could be, watching it back, I was like, that's probably he's representing them in still some capacity, the family.
Additionally, the way the New York Police Department works is the initial police on the scene are not going to do other than securing the scene, making sure no one is in any kind of serious injury, and then calling the appropriate agencies if there are people that are injured, and of course, doing any kind of emergency care that's needed. They aren't going to be the ones that are going to do the gathering of the evidence for future crimes. That's another unit of the NYPD. So they will put up tape. They will stay on the scene until that other unit gets there. But the evidence collection unit, the ECU, will then arrive on the scene, and they're the ones that take the pictures, swab fingerprints, look for DNA, and do all of that. And it's a separate unit that have expertise in that collection. And clearly, he would be trespassing in addition to possibly the obstruction of governmental administration, because you can't just cross the police tape without the permission of the authorities.
I appreciated the call out with his ungloved hand reading or looking at paper. I'm not sure if they've done that in the prior 3 seasons before. In the comic, Daredevil can read by tracing his finger over the printed page and feeling the letters on the page, which they haven't, I don't think they've done, and they have done it, I just missed it. But the same would work with drawings or paintings. And so the fact he's using that skill over the paintings and recognizing his girlfriend in the artwork was impressive, because he suddenly he realizes, uh-oh, very quickly that like it's a drawing of his girlfriend, and which clues him in on the rescue that would need to take place.
Mhm. I'd be curious if and I don't know any people who are blind, but if that's a just feature of some forms of blindness, because I remember with the Hawkeye series, they did an incredible job representing deafness in various capacities. So if they have somebody who's a coordinator on or a consultant, who's advising them on this, on, not just kind of, walking around pretending, I guess, to play a blind person, but really kind of embodying that role.
And they also, kind of brought home in the shower scene with his hands caressing her face and kind of getting that mental imprint that, people have seen blind people able to touch someone's face to see what they look like or to recognize people that they've met before. The being able to take it off the printed page is clearly a super enhancement that Daredevil has, that I don't like Gabrielle. I don't know if any blind person would have that ability. The paint, some of it was um, a little thick, so you could feel it. Daredevil clearly having the ability to even do printed pages, as we've seen in comics, is a real superpower.
And just well done. And it's not just the beat up the bad guy. There's actually detective work taking place and questions being asked and analysis to figure out what's happening. And that's just nice to see, because it's not intellectually lazy of we just need fast cars and explosions with bright colors. This is actually there's meat to this. Which brings us to one of my, I don't want to say favorite, but most thoughtful questions about breaching privileges. And that's when can a psychotherapist disclose a doctor-patient communication? And there, going back to law school, there are cases with if a therapist or psychiatrist knew of a risk, did they have a obligation to disclose, or if not an obligation, at least the right to disclose, or did they have to keep their mouth shut, knowing that they have a dangerous patient who's making claims of violence against someone, which then goes to the issue of like, is it a specific threat, or is it just I'm angry at the world and want to smash things? Which, okay, is that specific enough? And we have this scene with, Heather with Muse not knowing that the Muse is actually, her patient. She thinks she just has a troubled young person. And eventually she realizes, uh-oh. And there are standards for when, and it varies by state. There are standards for when a mental health professional has the option to disclose a doctor-patient communication. And Your Honor, it looks like you wax poetic on this.
I did not. I think
Oh,
this is Gabriella's work.
oh, well done.
Yeah.
It's so thorough. I thought the judge did it. So
Yeah.
you just take it away.
Yeah, because I was really like fascinated by this scene because it was like what would have happened had she had been able to escape, right? Because obviously there's that impetus that she has to flee, right? Because she realizes she's in danger. She's sitting with a serial killer. But and obviously it doesn't pan out that way, but what if she had, right? And I think to your point, Josh, psychiatrists, therapists, and mental health professionals generally are in a very parallel state to us as lawyers, right? Like you think of the confidentiality lessons from law school, and it's you have to. It was something I always kind of initially struggled with in law school because the idea of confidentiality sometimes goes against what you want to report, right? But you have to in order to build that trust with your client, to learn their story, right? If we're talking in the context of criminal defense lawyers, right? You can't just walk up and say, yep, he told me he did it. Like, he committed to all this stuff, right? You can't actually go up and do that. Which is why some people become criminal defense lawyers and some don't. But mental health professionals are very similar, right? Their goal is to get their clients to tell them about their issues, to be able to assist them. And so, as you said, states across the country have laws that either require or permit mental health professionals to disclose information about patients who become violent. And New York actually has a law that was enacted in 2013 that kind of uh, enhances their current law regarding ability to the duty to report, basically, and it moves it from permissive to mandatory duty, requiring mental health professionals to report when they believe patients may pose a danger to themselves or others. But it also protects therapists from civil and criminal liability for failure to report if they act in good faith. It also, this law, which is called the SAFE Act, allows law enforcement to remove firearms owned by patients reported to likely be dangerous. And part of what we're talking about, right, is it dates back to the Hippocratic Oath, right? This is not something new. It is very, very old law, right? And so again, New York has a law under New York section 9.46. It's the SAFE Act, or I should say amended under the SAFE Act, which requires mental health professionals who have determined that a patient presents a serious or imminent danger to himself or others to report the concern to state government and not to third parties potentially at risk. So they do have to report it to authorities. They can't go warn, let's say in this case we're talking about a serial killer, but if they know that like a patient intends to harm their mother or their loved one, they can't go call the loved one up and say, hey, so and so may attack you. They have to report it to authorities, and they have to document their reasons for reporting. It has to be part of the clinical record. And interestingly enough, what I found when I was looking at this is that the New York Psychiatric Association, the New York State Psychiatric Association actually expressed objections to the language in the amended SAFE Act. First, they were concerned about the breach of confidentiality that might occur with a report would not be warranted because the statute fails to require the presence of imminence in addition to the threat of serious harm. So there's not that imminent danger component that some other laws may have. And they were also concerned about potential HIPAA violations. So that's another whole ball of wax that you get into when you're talking about privacy disclosures, right? Duty to treat, and that's where that kind of other privacy concerns come in.
Well said. And yeah, I mean, these laws get modified after an incident.
And the incident here in question was in 2012, was the Sandy Hook incident. That's what spurned the creation of the SAFE Act. And then later on, the Red Flag Acts is the part of the SAFE Act that was amended later when you stated the SAFE Act as amended, that dealt with the red flag laws, which enabled those same people to go before a judge to see if a person had guns, that they would lose their ability to have a license to carry a gun in New York. And again, that came from even more incidents of mass school shootings and mass shootings. But yeah, the SAFE Act was a result of the murders in Connecticut that we all know as Sandy Hook.
Yeah, just so there were other cases that I remember from law school with, again, that were more like a one person committing a murder situation, and then that allowing the legislature to take action for changing the law. But again, it's these changes and these laws are written because of something horrible happening. Like they're not proactive. It's very rare for legislation to be proactive. I mean, the Bill of Rights is written in the negative for a reason, just to make sure that rights aren't abridged, because it's hard to think of what are we going to list here as fundamental rights. With that said, let's turn to the next issue of the duty to rescue. So, generally speaking, there's no duty to rescue, and this is one of those things that makes non-lawyers freak out, that we don't have a hue and cry system of, if you see a kid drowning, you have no obligation to go rescue that kid. If you watch the child die, that just makes you a bad person, but you're not criminally or civilly liable for refusing to go out and put yourself at harm's way to rescue them. There are some exceptions, whether there's a special relationship, and that can be defined in statute, like parent to child, and there are other examples as well. But with, you find out that your girlfriend is the target of a serial killer, understandably, one would go, hey, I should take action to make sure my significant other does not have a horrible demise. But I don't think there's a legal obligation to do so. But Gabby, you have some thoughts on this that are in the outline, and
Yeah,
I can tell it's your style. So take it away.
I know. I was like, when you put generally no duty to rescue, I was like, wait a minute, because I did look it up, and it's interesting because obviously we talk about, yes, you have maybe a moral duty to rescue, absolutely, but we're here to talk about the law, not moral code of ethics. But what I was really fascinated by, because I did take time to look up the special relationship exception. And one would think when you talk again in kind of non-legal terms about a special relationship, you would think parent-child, maybe spouses. You don't have a duty to rescue your spouse, your significant other, nobody. Like if you are in any way not parent-child, you do not have to rescue that person. You do have maybe a moral duty, and it makes you a horrible spouse, but but specifically applicable here, is that there is an exception if you create the peril, right? There's two big exceptions, and that is if you interfere with a rescue operation, or if you create the peril yourself. So my argument is that could Daredevil be on the hook with a duty to rescue because he let Muse escape by not, for some reason, everyone in this universe is exceptionally durable, and particularly Muse, who got beat around in the prior episode and shows up to Heather's couch looking absolutely fine, with not a scratch on him. Matt has scratch, like his back is messed up, right? But this kid is totally fine, and he got the living daylights kicked out of him. But Daredevil didn't, I guess, execute him completely. I don't know. So by letting him escape, did he create a need for a rescue, which is one of the exceptions, right, to a duty to rescue, or the lack thereof, which is when an individual creates a situation which puts another in peril, it creates a duty to rescue that individual. So you could argue, in this case, Daredevil may be on the hook.
But that requires, with the letting Muse escape, so that's he is rescued.
Was not securing him negligent, would be
Yeah.
what I guess would have to be the first level issue. And I can't also, on a Plessy argument, it's very unforeseeable that he then would end up, if he didn't take care to secure him, that he would then end up on his girlfriend's couch. to have therapy. So I think it's a little bit far removed, but it's a wonderful exercise. And he did at least have a bloody nose,
Yeah, so he,
for which he could then paint.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's troubling on so many levels. Um, so I'm glad you're not saying that there was a duty to commit a summary execution, because I'd be very concerned about you. If you felt that way, Matt should really be going full Punisher right now.
Yeah, that's why I'm couching it as, what was the failure to secure him. But he at that point he was very concerned with making sure that the victim was still alive. So I really don't think he in any way acted negligently after beating him to that level, to think that it would be foreseeable that he would be able to walk away from that, and then end up in his girlfriend's office. So it's a little bit, but like that's one of the reasons for this kind of show, is to take some of the stuff to the extremes for the fun of it.
Yeah. And I mean, he should have seen that somebody taking that many hits would get back up again. If we assume in this universe that Bullseye was pushed over a building that was quite high and somehow magically survived to stand trial, like magically. So
All the
everybody's
main
just really
characters,
durable.
all the main characters have a lot of hit points to
Yeah,
bring it back to Dungeons and Dragons, including Daredevil, who really takes a beating and keeps on going time after time himself.
a lot of plot armor,
Yes.
uh now I don't remember from the prior seasons if Stiltman was killed or not, who made the initial body armor for Daredevil, and that at least had, you know, reduced the stab wounds. Because at the beginning of this show, Bullseye hits him, I don't know, 9, 10 times with knives. And if they're just sticking out of the body armor, that's just pointy and uncomfortable, as opposed to you have 9 stab wounds, which your girlfriend's never asked you about all the scars on your chest from the times you've been stabbed. Uh, so again, maybe it's just thick padding. So maybe that's how Matt can get away with uh, having less stab wounds and other bruises, or just bruises as opposed to other blunt force trauma, compared to the artist who has basically a canvas mask. Like that's not adamantium. Like that's a lot to get back up.
I
Well,
also did a
Ahsoka was an excellent nurse, remember?
Yes, true.
yeah. I I also did appreciate how he had his outfit like ready to roll with him so that he was like, "Yep, I got it." Like I thought that was pretty funny and very comic book lit. He's like, "Ta-da!" By the next scene.
Yes, very
Yeah.
Superman, very Superman.
There's an Archer episode with him suiting up and forcing someone to watch him, which made me think of, it's like, oh God, don't make me watch you suit up again. Like that was my reaction to if the psychiatrist is tied up and watch me get into costume. And if it's a 15-minute exercise. All right. Now we get into self-defense, because there's a lot of self-defense that happens here in defense of others. So, how to break this down? We have Matt Murdock as Daredevil going to save his significant other from the Muse. Her name's Heather. I'm blanking on her last name. And just
Heather
about
Glenn, Dr. Glenn.
Dr. Glenn. She does have a name. I just want to be clear. I just remember Heather. So Dr. Glenn, duty or defense of others, should be kicking in. We also have Dr. Glenn pick up Muse's sidearm and use it to dispatch Muse while Daredevil is in combat with Muse, protecting her from Muse. Your Honor, this looks like your style of notes.
Actually,
Uh,
it was yours from last time, and I just cut and pasted it over because we have discussed justification before. And basically, to sum it up, is you are allowed to use reasonable force in defense of others if they're in imminent danger of harm themselves, and likewise to protect yourself by using reasonable force in order to stop the attack of you or others. So as long as what you do is deemed to be reasonable, you would be justified in that action. And here, the serial killer who has killed others, and Heather is well aware that he has killed others, and he was also basically trying to kill her. She absolutely would be justified to put down the Muse by using deadly force because he was using deadly force against all of them. And Matt likewise would be protecting an individual and was using a reasonable degree of force in order to stop Muse from continuing in his duty. So I think both of them would be able to avail themselves of the justification defenses if they were so charged. And I don't really see them ever being charged, but if they were charged, that they would have those defenses available to them.
and if I remember correctly, there's a provision for self-defense if you're trying to escape a kidnapping or false imprisonment situation. I don't remember how it's worded exactly, but she was like bound and restrained and cut. So she is bleeding out. So like there are other factors at play that I think would go to the justification for her to pull the trigger to stop Muse.
Yeah, in section 2B of 3515, dealing with justification, if he or she reasonably believes that such other person is committing or attempting to commit a kidnapping, forcible rape, forcible criminal sexual act, or robbery, he or she reasonably believes that such person is committing or attempting to commit a burglary, and the circumstances are such that the use of deadly physical force is authorized by that section. So yes, in order to, it wasn't even just a reasonable belief that she was being kidnapped. She was being forcibly held against her will, even if it was her own office.
Well said. Which now brings us to threatening a journalist. Something not at all dark and disturbing. Gabby, do you want to help us understand what's happening with Ben's granddaughter here, or niece?
Yeah. Yeah. So I can say that, before we get into what he's actually doing, which is threatening a journalist, I worked in communications and state legislator. If you do talk to journalists and you do, kind of ask them, hey, don't publish this, or, can we work some, maybe do this, but not that. You can ask, right? You can always ask, right? But you cannot do what he did, which is say, hey, don't publish this, and actively like threaten her. So you can't do that. You cannot, you take the good with the bad in state government and any form of government, right? That is what the press is there for. And so we obviously have the First Amendment, which protects the freedom of the press, right? And I thought it was interesting. I went back and watched this episode, and I hadn't clocked it the first time I watched it, but this is the first episode that we do not see the BB report in the episode, which I thought was actually very chilling when you watch that scene. Is almost like she's been silenced already. So I frankly have my own issues with how the BB report is being done, but to not see it is, kind of chilling that she is being silenced. So, but you do have freedom of the press, which in Gitlow versus New York, the Supreme Court actually held that, that this was back in 1925. The Supreme Court held that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution had extended the First Amendment's provisions, which protect freedom of speech and freedom of the press, to apply to all governments of the United States. So previously, it was only applicable to the federal government and actions by the federal government. But this was the case that applied it, interestingly enough, dealing with the state of New York, applied it to actions by the state. And this is clearly within the state. And then you have some other cases, Muir versus Minnesota, which rejects the notion of prior restraint on publication and decided that freedom of press applies to states via due process clause. And New York Times v. Sullivan, which held that the press is largely free from any adverse act or court action if attempts to truthfully to report the news of public concern. And when the news involves a public official, even erroneous reportage has a high degree of protection.
A lot there, and also brings back memories from the First Amendment class I took long ago and far away. But these things are timeless. Like, this isn't a question of time, place, or manner. Like, this is, I'm silencing the press, which is a no-no under the Constitution. It's also fun to see when the court started applying the First Amendment to the states through the 14th. Now it's like California has its equivalent of the First Amendment that actually gives some more rights. So it's the federal Constitution is the floor, not the ceiling. And so different states can have, some of them just copy it verbatim and others can add other enhancements to it, but you can't subtract from the federal. You can only add to it.
Likewise, New York has more protections than the federal government because of the large amount of media companies that are based in New York. There are several provisions of New York law that go further than the U.S. Constitution with regards to protection of the press and protection of their sources and the underlying research that they do, and that they have a lot of protections. My only other, or I guess to play devil's advocate, which is clearly fun to do in a show called The Daredevil, that, you know, BB and kind of acted in an unethical journalistic manner on various occasions, including when, you know, she got this aide drunk and high to get information from him, and it was an aggressive negotiation, to use another Star Wars term, with regards to getting her to not do something, kind of calling on some of the bad things that she did to maybe level the playing ground. So, you know, whereas he clearly did not have the right to stop her First Amendment rights, I think he was also playing at a very high level in as much as what was done to him in the prior episodes as well.
Oh, he has a right to be mad at her. Like, I
Mhm.
absolutely do not question of, we're friends. You wrote this hit piece. You twisted things radically out of context after you kept me out late, got me drunk, and, you know, high on a controlled substance. We're not friends anymore. Like, that could have had a very different conversation like the day after that article. It's like, you torpedoed a good policy. You
Mhm.
exploited me. I'm angry at you. I will never see you again. As opposed to the Godfather approach of extracting revenge that way.
Well, he does have
Or
soprano ties.
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, and you know, the thing is, like, being off the record, right? That doesn't actually exist. Nothing is technically off the record, as much as you would wish and hope it would be. You know, that's where you have leveraging relationships with journalists, and really you can, you know, people that you may trust more than others, to, you know, kind of give background to, but just saying something's off the record does not mean they're going to not report it. And, you know, yes, you can have kind of discussions with journalists, and kind of try to, you know, have compromises in how things are covered, but you cannot actively stop them from reporting what they want to do.
Yeah, it's one thing to go, I'm going to give you an exclusive if you wait 72 hours. and that sort of gamesmanship. So that way the narrative can be controlled, opposed to, I'm just going to threaten the press.
Or take away their press credentials to cover certain events or press conferences or other such actions if they don't report in a favorable manner.
Yeah, all bad. All bad. Not how we roll. Which brings us to the closing scene, which is it's Kingpin being Kingpin. But I have questions about, we see it's a conspiracy to commit murder. And on one level, it looks like Vanessa and the tracksuit crime boss conspiring to kill Fisk. But then it made me wonder, was this Fisk and Vanessa conspiring to kill the mob boss in a tracksuit? Or did Vanessa and the tracksuit mobster conspire to kill Fisk, and Fisk is just really smart and was ready for it? So there's I think three options here. But this is conspiracy to commit murder. And it's a weird one, because if it's in the second category of Vanessa and Fisk doing this like double blind, we're going to set up this mobster so my bodyguard can take him down, that's still a conspiracy to commit murder. And you still have to get rid of the body, and it's in a restaurant that's empty. Who would like to help address this?
I'll start with first saying I choose choice B. I think this was Fisk and Vanessa conspiring to kill Luca. I didn't think that initially, but like within 10 seconds of the credits going, I was like, oh, wait a minute, they set up Luca. But it's very possible that Kingpin through other means found out about this hit, but I really believe that Fisk and Vanessa got together on this. But in any event, it's still a conspiracy. And in New York, under Section 105.15 of the Penal Law, it would be conspiracy in the second degree. A person is guilty of conspiracy in the second degree when with intent that conduct constituting a Class A felony. In this case, that Class A felony would be murder in the second degree. He agrees with one or more persons to engage in or cause the performance of such conduct, and that is a Class B felony. The murder itself is a Class A1 felony. It's common law murder, murder in the second degree with intent to cause the death of another. He causes the death of such person or a third person, and clearly the person who pulled the trigger was acting at the behest of the kingpin. The triggerman would be guilty of murder in the second degree, and Fisk and Vanessa could be found guilty of conspiracy in the second degree. If they both conspired, if only one conspired, then only one of them would be guilty of that crime.
This is either really disturbing and creative couples therapy, or just evil for the sake of being evil. But Gabby, your thoughts?
I'm torn because when I saw it, I had the inverse reaction. When I saw it initially, I thought it was a plot with the two of them to kill Luca. But then when I watched it back again, and I just can't help but thinking it's Fisk knowing about it, or maybe the way I thought it, it wasn't so much a him being very clever, almost like he ran a test, right? And that was, and potentially you could have another crime here that I just thought of, which is he mentions earlier in the episode to his bodyguard or staff member, whatever this man's title is
Fuck.
within the Fisk administration, some made up title. But he says that he now has the resources of the office of the mayor, right? And we talked about previously, corruption and misuse of conflicts of interest and misuse of governmental resources, and he could potentially have used that to find this plot out. And he certainly could just have gone to a restaurant alone and told Vanessa he was going to the restaurant alone to see what happened, to see if she would be loyal to him or not.
And Buck and Kingpin actually have that discussion as to the, the using of the governmental resources in a non-governmental manner in the office. So, they highlighted that issue earlier on with regards to this. He could have been very, very well prepared, having dropped that hint to Vanessa. But yeah, my feeling on the relationship with Vanessa and Kingpin, which goes back to the other episodes dealing with Vanessa not really feeling that she was in danger because of Kingpin's love for her. That love, as weird as their relationship is really, almost set in stone in the comics. So it would be a big jump to have Vanessa backstabbing the Kingpin. Not that it couldn't happen, but I see it more as she might have thought of it for that brief second. She might have encouraged Luca to do it for that brief second, but I think then she goes to Kingpin and says, he's coming for you. But we'll see in the last episode, I have a feeling.
Yeah, it's their relationship is either really strong, or it's gonna have some really complex therapy issues with.
Right. And if she knew where Adam was and what he had been doing to Adam, then I could see her doing this. And maybe she did find out, but that to me would have given Vanessa the push to maybe do this on her own to take out, absent knowing, the situation with Adam. I don't know if she would do it yet. That might be the domino that launches it down the road.
Good thinking. Good thinking. Um, Fascinating. So, a lot there. Gabby, anything else to add? So, pivoting back to our notes, that looks like every issue for this episode. I I thought this was a fantastic episode. Just going back to the fight, well choreographed. It's bright light, so it's not like they're hiding in the dark for a fight scene. Whoever the stunt people are look good. We haven't seen anything as brutal as the grappling hook get shot through somebody's shoulder before. So Daredevil might have a rule against killing, but apparently maiming's on the table. Uh, which again, he did that to keep Muse from going after the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's justified. Uh, Lethal force would have been justified. So this, while violent, and it's like, wow, um, he's going to have to clean that really well. So that way there isn't any evidence of the Muse on it. Uh, I do also wonder about with him taking his glove off at times, if he's left fingerprints of himself that could be used to identify him at a scene.
I mean, I think with that, I would say, because I thought about that as well, but then you have and maybe this is where like the tension is, the highest person in office knows who he is. So there's a kind of, and what I personally have loved about the last couple episodes is the cutting between Daredevil and Fisk as kind of two sides of a coin. And it's, cutting as one makes an action and it's cut, back and forth between them. And it just really shows how interconnected they are and how parallel they are. So that's what I've personally loved. And I would say, it's that kind of tension between them. Why would, Fisk kind of risk that coming out?
Yeah, because he Yeah, what does he have to lose if he discloses the identity of Daredevil? And it's like, how did you know that? Would be because it goes to his guilt from the prior crimes that he's somehow out from. Like he should still be rotting in a prison cell. So how he gets out is still a mystery to me, despite all the weird stuff from season 3 of him gathering information on people and using it to exploit them and try to cheat the system. But he should still be rotting in a cell federally. So not just state and federal convictions there to
I'm
put him away.
Yeah, I mean, he should also be dead. He was shot in the eye. Like, he should be dead as well. But again, and maybe that's where Daredevil's like not being more carefree with breaking people's elbows and like beating people within an inch of their life, because people clearly have several more inches of their life than normal reality, because everybody is incredibly durable in this universe, and what would kill a person or severely incapacitate them in our reality does not seem to exist in the show. And the only thing that seems to actually kill you is like a bullet to the head. And sometimes even then, like, it depends.
Yeah,
So, you know.
merely a flesh wound. He has a very thick skull. Uh,
In soap operas, superhero shows, comic books, and Star Wars, uh, they're not necessarily dead until they've, burned the pier.
yeah, yeah, but it's from the Hawkeye series. Like, there's video evidence of him planning a crime with Bishop. Like that, like you don't walk that off easily. Like, so did that get suppressed somehow? Because it is a party admission. Even though it's without a warrant, it's still a party admission unless there's fruit of the poisonous tree somehow. And I haven't watched that for a while, but uh, moreover, we do see Kate's near stepdad. That he was in this episode, one of the prior episodes. So again, subtle callbacks that they're doing.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it speaks to the kind of um, power, not dynamics, but how power exists in the universe, and that, just as Kingpin was able to be elected to mayor, these other kind of shadowy figures and characters are in the fact that he's at this private fundraising gala of elite, what they very clearly demonstrate is, kind of New York's movers and shakers, right? Like the people who really decide power in New York, and he's a part of this. So, I think that goes to show like what this universe actually is, at least in the New York City. Who knows elsewhere?
Yeah, it's how did Barton react to this? Did he just stay in upstate and go like, well, that's unfortunate. How do you not take action with that? I'm not saying that a mayoral race is an Avengers level threat. However, you think others would get involved. But then it's a matter of budget because we're not going to see Spider-Man and Hawkeye appear. That's just you can't have them all get together in Daredevil. As cool as it would be, just not going to be happen. So we're at almost at the end. So it's Sunday night when we're recording. Tuesday we get the last episode, and then we'll be game on to record our uh, conclusion to this series. And I'm glad to hear there's been casting for season 2. Now, Gabby, I haven't seen this. Who's been announced?
I believe I saw Matthew Lillard has been cast, and I particularly noted it because I don't remember the couple of other actors that were cast. But I do recall that seeing that the several that I did see were all cast as political opponents to Wilson Fisk. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out and where it ends up. For clearly he's going to stay mayor in some capacity or stay in the political space if he's getting political opponents next season. So
Yeah, there's still the city council, so who might not be. We're just gonna go fix up Red Hook, like might be not okay with some of them. So, all right. Well, that said, thank you everyone for tuning in wherever you are. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. Take care.